to the GAB Talks by the Independent Press Award. I'm your hostess, Gabby Olzak. To participate in the 2024 Book Award competitions, please visit independentpressaward.com. Thank you for joining us. Today we will be speaking with author Laurel Ann Hill, prose editor and contributor of Fault Zone Detachment, the 10th in an anthology series from the California Writers Club. Fault Zone Detachment is the winner of the 2024 Independent Press Award in the anthology category. This is the fourth Fault Zone anthology that Laurel Ann has served in an editorial capacity. She has been a member of the California Writers Club for more than 2 decades. Laurel Ann debuted her first novel, Heroes Arise, in 2007 to critical acclaim. The Engine Woman Light, Laurel Ann's second novel, was recognized with 13 awards, including the 2017 Independent Press Award. Laurel Ann's third novel, Plague of Flies, Revolts of the Spirits, 1846, is a 2022 Independent Press Award Distinguished Favorite and winner of numerous other awards. In addition to her 3 novels, she has published more than 30 short stories. Laurel Ann joins us from Northern California, where she resides with the spirit of her late husband, David. Thank you, Laurel Ann, and congratulations, and welcome to the GAB Talks.
Well, I am so honored to be here, Gabby. I'm just absolutely delighted. Now, I do have to mention that, just so everybody's clear, that Fault Zone Detachment is actually the 9th. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. No, the 10th.
Oh, my.
Yeah, is actually the 10th anthology in our series. The 3 comes from the ones that I was editor-in-chief.
I see. Okay, I stand corrected.
7, 8, and 9, I was the editor-in-chief. Number 10, I was the prose editor and a contributor.
So, Laurel Ann, tell us a little bit about Fault Zone Detachment. It's an anthology, which means it's a compilation of short stories. What does each story have in common? What is the overall theme of the book?
Well, it's not really a theme, but when we chose the word detachment for the authors to focus on, to include it in a small way or a large way in every poem, every piece of short fiction, every piece of short nonfiction. So that gives them a lot of room for thought and to work. So we could have people detached from those they love, people detached from reality, people detached from all sorts of things. And people really use their imaginations.
I bet. Now, Laurel Ann, how did you come up with, I'm sure you didn't do it on your own, I'm sure you did it as a team, but how did you come up with the word detachment as a springboard?
Well, it's one of the words that's associated with earthquake faults. There are strike slip faults, the detachment faults, and this kind of
fault zone.
And so fault zone is the name attached to every anthology, and it's followed by a descriptive word or a particular type of fault.
Now, Laurel Ann, you did contribute to this anthology. The past anthologies you did not, but it was very interesting. This one you served as prose editor and also contributor. Tell us about the work that you contributed to Fault Zone.
I contributed a story called Weird to the Third Power.
Oh, okay.
And so that is simply the story of a couple of elderly men who've been in contact for their whole lives. They were friends as children, and they were involved in an unfortunate situation when they were teens, where they were held at gunpoint while someone else who was not particularly a nice person had been murdered, and they were going to be given the blame for it. But they avoided that because my protagonist did kind of weird magic.
Interesting. Do you have an excerpt from it that you'd like to read? Or I hate to put you on the spot, but maybe there's a particular section of it that you really are attached to.
Let me just read the opening paragraph, and I think that will be enough.
Excellent. I'm glad I asked.
Okay. And I'm going to take off my glasses.
Of course.
I watched Carlo enter the passcode for the library's main door. A minute later, we're inside and the alarm's off. My longtime buddy, a locksmith, knows his way around our hometown security systems. The beam from his flashlight wavers. Bet he has the jitters, too. I glanced toward the nearest security camera, still deactivated. Oh, man. Two law-abiding old farts shouldn't need to case a lady's room in the middle of the night. But every 786 days, me and Carlo have no choice. All because I'm a frigging lousy sorcerer.
I love it. That's good. Now, let me ask you, how did you go about finding the authors for the anthologies?
Well, they're all members of the San Francisco Peninsula branch. And so we have a call for stories and poetry, and we send out our requirements, and they send in their stories and their poems, and we make a decision, and our decisions are blind. We don't know who sent them, except for one fellow who always writes about the same character, so there's no way of hiding him.
There's no way to avoid that. Yeah, I'm sure it's a pretty small circle of authors and writers, so to speak, large but small in the sense that you probably all know each other, so it's best to do it on a blind basis.
Yeah, and we have maybe 140 members average, and some of them send in and some of them don't.
So you have a really interesting backstory. You studied microbiology in college. Your professional background is rooted in science. And Laurel, we've spoken before, and you always describe yourself first as an author and then as a former underground storage tank operator.
Really?
What? Yes, but I love that. First of all, what is that? And why do you often make that distinction?
Well, an underground storage tank operator is the person who has to make sure that the owner of the underground storage tanks, if the volume exceeds a certain minimum amount, conforms with all the federal and state regulations.
Wow.
And so I had to write the program. I had to write the what's called a SPCC for oil. And our underground storage tank material was diesel fuel because we had a biologic facility and also a pharmaceutical facility for research and development. And if the power went out, we had cell cultures, we had chemicals, we had all kinds of things that needed to be kept at certain temperatures.
Wow. So you did.
It would ran the backup generators.
That's a serious and important job, and I don't blame you for bringing that up because it's not everyone that can do that.
Well, I just had to learn the rules. I had to write the program. I had to become licensed by the state. And I was just this little old lady going in, and people were, here comes this little old lady. And so then, and they just looked at me in amazement when I left because I must have gotten a perfect or near perfect score.
Wow.
Because their eyes just widened. She did that.
So you did a lot of technical writing. In fact, you really didn't start your professional career, writing career, that is, well into your 50s with the publication of a short story. And then, of course, your first multi-award winning novel, Heroes Arise, was published in 2009. So
actually, that was 2007, later in the year.
2007.
Okay, 2007.
Describe this journey and what led you to become an author later in life.
Well, first of all, I had a mishap. Yes, that's a good name for it, a mishap. I went and got a bug that I didn't know what it was. And nobody would have known what it was at that time because it had not yet been identified. And that was norovirus.
Norovirus.
And norovirus does horrible things to the stomach and the intestines. And you just want to, upcheck and keep upchecking. And so I literally had such a problem with that I damaged the nerves in my spinal cord.
Wow.
That's what I figured that it was, because I had muscle cramps in my back nonstop, 24/7 for 6 weeks.
Were you able to walk?
If I had to get to the bathroom.
Wow.
That's about it. And somebody had to help me.
So you went through this horrible sickness, and when you came out of it, you just sort of had this epiphany, so to speak, that you wanted to write.
A little more interesting.
Okay.
One of the drugs that they gave me, because they couldn't stop the cramps. They had to try and stop the pain because it was screaming loud pain.
Okay.
And so they gave me this one medication, and it made me hallucinate. And of the things I hallucinated was the Grim Reaper. And the Grim Reaper was not holding a scythe. He was holding a pen.
Wow.
And it was, you wanted to write, miss your chance.
Really? So hence the magical realism in your novels.
Yeah, and so that was just a hallucination. And I thought, well, I guess I'm recovering. I better write.
And that was it.
So I started. And of course, I've written some stuff. Like as a teenager, I entered a bunch of essay contests, and I won enough money for 4 years of tuition and books at San Francisco State.
That's a lot of money, Laurel Ann.
Well, it was back. It was,
yeah.
And now,
yeah. So your writing then did put you through college.
Yeah, it put me through college.
Okay.
And my first award was when I was 11 years old. That was a horrible story published by the San Francisco News. But I figured it was the only one submitted to the children's section that week. And then I wrote a few short stories in college and got good grades on them and things like that.
But then you shelved it and you focused on your scientific career until the sickness. And then it started again. So it started, it started with Heroes Arise.
Yeah. Actually, it started before Heroes Arise.
With the short stories.
Yeah, the short story started. The novel, actually, I wrote because I'd written a short story that turned out to be the ending of Heroes Arise. And my mentor, who was also a publisher, told me, said, if you can write me a novel with that ending, I'll publish it.
And you did.
And I did. And then she told me, of course, a couple of weeks later, oh, by the way, how are you doing on that? And I said, oh, I'm coming along all right. She says, good. We have it done in 6 weeks.
What? And did you?
Yep.
Wow.
I don't know how, because I was working full time.
That's amazing. So speaking of Heroes Arise, your first novel, I was delighted to see that you received an endorsement from Jean M. Aul, author of Clan of the Cave Bear. Now, I read and loved that book when I was a teenager, and I was just recently speaking about that book because a friend of mine named her daughter Ayla after the protagonist in Clan of the Cave Bear. And Jean said of you and the book that it's an exciting and moving story that gripped my attention from the first word and wouldn't let me put it down. This author's first work shows a strong talent and a remarkable future. Wow. So how did that come about?
Well, she didn't want to do it.
Really?
My publisher asked her because she was just finishing up her last in her series of her Clan of Cave Bear novels. But she thought, okay, she'd sit down and read the first page. And she sat down and she read the first page. And then she turned to the second page. And she turned to the third page. And I think she read the whole book in one sitting.
Well, it sounds like it. That I was very impressed when I read that. So, after Heroes Arise, then you wrote your second book.
Yes, now, Engine Woman's Light.
Now that the Engine Woman's Light and Plague of Flies, Revolt of the Spirit, 1846. Those are similar in the sense that the main protagonist is a woman. To your first book, that was not the case. Tell us a little bit about that. Your family history, Laurel Ann, is peppered with strong women, brushes with death. And you do talk a lot about the influence that your grandparents had in your life. But I want to talk about your maternal grandmother. You said that she taught you that women without power can still make a powerful difference in our world. That's a great statement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It gave me that feeling, that knowledge, because she only had an 8th grade education. Her parents came from Sweden. Her father died when she was 11, and she had to go out and go to work. And she made a difference in this world just in the things that she did for people, because she, for her church, for her friends, for things in society that mattered. She had no power, but she was a good woman. Now, my great-grandmother on my father's side, however, was politically active, was Mexican, immigrated as a child after her father's death, my great-grandfather's death, up into the United States, into California. And she was an amazing, amazing woman. And women that were of that nationality at that time from Mexico, I don't think that they really wrote and sold their work. It was mainly for home consumption by the family. So there's not much that survived that she's written. One poem is all I've ever been able to find. But it was picked up and published later on by someone doing an anthology of women in California.
Really?
So, yeah, but Hippolyta, she was incredible. When she was 16 years old, she was out recruiting Mexicans that had come to California to go back and help drive out the French from Mexico. And,
wow,
and her mother, which was my paternal that would be my great-great-grandmother. She donated the money to equip a group of men to go down to Mexico and fight. And that was a substantial contribution from her, because they didn't give you uniforms when you went to do that. They probably didn't even give you guns. You had to be equipped by someone. And so she helped equip a group of men to go down and help to drive the French out, which ultimately they did.
So, Laurel Ann, so let's get back to your great-great-grandmother, your Mexican great-great-grandmother. Your third novel, Plague of Flies, Revolt of the Spirits, 1846, you actually dedicated to your great-great-grandparents.
Yeah, now that was my great-grandparents.
Oh, it's different.
Yeah, there's great-grandparents. Great-grandmother was the poet. Great-great-grandmother organized paid for it to have the men equipped to go from California to fight for Mexico against the French.
So you have a very long line of powerful women in your family.
Yes.
So how did that influence how did your Mexican heritage influence not only the settings in your novel, but also the character development? Again, your last novel, Plague of Flies, the protagonist was a 16-year-old teenager. Her name was Catalina Delgado. She came from a very overprotective family. She was very insulated, but yet she was very brave. She was very spiritual and really very powerful. So how did your Mexican heritage, specifically your great-grandmother and your great-great-grandmother, influence your writing?
Well, let me think for a minute. Better not say for too long, huh? Yeah. I did not know as I was growing up who my father's family was. My father had wanted to go to sea when he was 16. His brother came and pulled him off the merchant marine boat, and he separated himself from his family. He had wanted to go to sea. He did not want to go work in an office. He did not want to get married. But he ended up working in an office, getting married, and so that's how that started. I did not find out until about 25 years ago that my family had come up from Mexico. I thought that they had come over and just been in California during the Mexican period in California's history.
How did you discover your family history then?
Well, I found my great-grandmother's poem in a collection that had been published, and found out that letters to her and documents to her were on storage in the California Historical Society in San Francisco. So I went and found them. There were a few things in English, most were not. And I had 2 University of California graduate students, women, translate it for me into English.
Wow.
And so it was just an amazing revelation. And that's when I discovered who my family was for sure. Now,
so did that inspire you, Laurel Ann, to then really focus your writing on that time frame in California?
Yes. Now, I had started The Engine Woman's Light a long time before that.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. It took me 20 years to write that because I had to learn how to run a steam locomotive. I had to learn what an engineer does. I had to get up into...
Well, a lot of authors wouldn't take it that far, but you obviously did.
Oh, yes. And I learned about repairing them, and I went and talked to people who repaired them, steam locomotives. And one fella who was in the garage, so to speak, for the steam engine, the skunk train steam engine. After I went and got an interview with him because I had a whole bunch of questions to ask him, he said that he'd never met a woman who knew so much about steam engines.
Well, there you go. There you go.
And learned everything I could. I went all over the United States trying to find documents in libraries or see another steam engine, and that took me a while. The other thing that took me a while was that I had to learn how to write a novel, which is not the same thing as writing a short story. It is not a very, 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 very long short story.
So what did you learn during that journey, Laurel Ann, that you could share with aspiring writers who think, oh, I wrote a short story, this is easy?
That you mean that okay.
With the difference between a short story and a novel. Yeah, novel. What was the biggest challenge? making that said?
When you have a short story, it's short, first of all. You've got everything is compressed. Your story arc is compressed into a small time frame instead of a long time frame that goes on for years. You generally are going to have one point of view character. And in a novel, you're allowed to have more than one point of view character. And you don't have all the subplots in a short story.
Right.
And in a long novel, you've got to have subplots. You have to have one character that has this personality and does things because of it. You have another character that has that personality and does things because of that. And so it's much more complex to write a novel. And you've got to know when you've got to carry your threads over and when you can wait a little before getting back into it again. But in a novel, in a short story, you don't have that problem because everything is just so condensed.
Laurel Ann, what do you think? What do you think resonates so much with your readers? Your books have won so many awards. What do you think it is about them?
I can't figure it out.
Yes, you can. Of course you can. I mean, they're such a delicious combination of historical fiction, magical realism, spirituality. There are so many different elements in each of your books. But what do you think resonates amongst the readers?
I put what I care about,
which is why
those books. People having a chance to redeem themselves. In other words, people who are cruds having a chance to turn their lives around, to actually do something good after they spent most of their life doing things not good. People who are underprivileged, people who have great obstacles in front of them, to figure out what to do to get around those obstacles. People in love who want to be together with the person they love, but they've been separated from them. And what are they going to do? How are they going to approach that? There's just, there's so much in life that there's opportunity in life. No matter what's happened to you, there's opportunity to go on with your life in a different way. And be a better person because of it.
Absolutely. I mean, all of your books have all of those things, which is why people love them. Let's circle back to Fault Zone. Hold up the book again.
Yeah. Here we go. Fault Zone Detachment. And I popped out the cover for that.
You know, that was my very next question, which is, so tell us about the cover. It's really a fantastic cover.
I found it on iStock.
Okay.
It took me about an hour to find it. And I was just amazed. I had come across a couple of other covers that weren't quite right, but when I saw this one, and there was a rope hanging down from the sky like they were dangling from helicopter or had just jumped out of a plane or who knows what it was. And so I had them take out that rope so that only a short segment of rope is connected them, and they're both gripping the opposite ends of that piece of rope, and they are detached except for that piece of rope and at risk of complete detachment.
It's just great. So what's this is the third Fault Zone that you've worked on, but as you mentioned, it's the 10th.
It's the fourth Fault Zone I've worked on.
The fourth Fault Zone you've worked on. Now, but it's the 10th in the series, you said?
Yeah, it's the 10th in the series. And actually, our earlier Fault Zones, I had stories in most of them, and I helped out with things like proofreading and things like that. So when I volunteered to be editor-in-chief for the first time, I'd been very familiar with the process of of creating a fault zone. So it wasn't like I just jumped into a totally new field. I
Of
had,
course, you had experience with it.
yeah.
So is there another fault zone in the works now?
Yes, there is. And this one, I'm going to be a minor player. I have escaped.
Oh, okay. So so you seem a bit happy about that, maybe too happy.
Well, let's put it this way. 4 fault zones of editing all the pros. And
A lot of
3 of those being editor-in-chief with all that goes into that.
yeah.
And I'm 81 years old, and I have another novel to finish, and I'm helping a woman who didn't learn how to read or write until she was in her 30s or 40s, who's written a memoir of how she went from being a penniless crop picker to a multimillionaire by learning how to sell, buy real estate, and build swimming pools and homes and all these other things. She's had a fantastic life, and she may not know how to put together a manuscript, but man, she sure has something to tell her family.
That's something I'd love to read. That's amazing.
And I'm trying to do it without changing her very simple way of writing. And then
yes, it needs to be in her voice.
Than anything that I would do. It's got to stay in her voice. And I'm hoping that I get that done by the end of the year.
So you're working on, actually, it sounds like 3 projects, the memoir, another fault zone. And you did mention that you're finishing a novel?
Well, I'm not even halfway done because I've devoted so much time to fault zone that it's just been dragging along. But it's a spirits meet steampunk story, and
Okay.
it starts in Mexico.
Okay. The year?
The year it starts, I'm not sure. I'd have to go look up and see when I started it.
Have a powerful female protagonist?
Yes. So someone who becomes stronger than she starts out, and young.
We like that.
And it winds up in a horrible situation where most of her family are obliterated, and she's got to figure out what she's going to do, how she can resolve this, how she can help those few of her family that remain.
Sounds like a compelling story. Can you guesstimate when it might be published?
Someday over the rainbow, way on.
Ending on that note, Laurel Ann, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us. Can you tell us, our viewers and our listeners, where we can purchase Fault Zone Detachment, Plague of Flies, Revolt of the Spirits, 1846, all of your other novels and short stories, and most importantly, learn a little bit about Laurel Ann Hill?
Well, my website where you can learn about me is laurelannhill.com. laurelannhill.com, LaurelannehIll.com. Now, the books can be obtained from Amazon. They can be obtained from this particular one was put out by Paper Angel Press. So Fault Zone Detachment you could actually buy by going to Paper Angel Press site. But it's also, they're all on, if you want one-stop shopping, you go to Amazon because that's where they are.
Fantastic. Well, we look forward to reading Fault Zone Detachment. We look forward to the new Fault Zones. Do you know what the name of that one will be?
Yes. Let me think for a minute. Fault Zone Faultless.
Fault Zone Faultless?
Yes.
Wonderful. And hopefully sooner rather than later, your new novel. We're really excited about that one. I know your readers will be looking forward to that.
Yes, and I think I've decided, although I could change my mind, to entitle it When Fire Ruled the Wind.
That's a wonderful title. Okay, we'll keep an eye out for that, Laurel Ann. Thank you so much for meeting with us today. It was really fun.
And thank you for inviting me.
It was great to see you. Next podcast, we'll speak with Janine Thompson, author of 911 From Your Soul. This is your hostess, Gabby Olzak of the GAB Talks. Until next time, keep on reading.